let's get the activities rolling. Thank you, everybody, for attending. Wonderful to see everybody. We have an exciting panel for you today. My name is Justin Luschner. I'm the manager of BioNext, Western's MedTech incubator. And the purpose of these connector series sessions that are sponsored by Western Research Parks, LEDC, BioNext, is to have everybody come together, empowering local innovators and entrepreneurs with the tools and knowledge required to succeed in today's very dynamic health technology environment. These sessions bring together leaders from academia, industry, and the entrepreneurial ecosystem to spark meaningful conversations and foster collaborations. So introducing our panelists. So on my left, Dr. Rob Arntfield is the founder and CEO of Deep Breathe, a medtech company leveraging AI to advance lung ultrasound technology and transform acute care practices. A professor of medicine at Western University and an experienced critical care physician, Rob is dedicated to the integrating cutting-edge AI with healthcare to improve patient outcomes and clinical efficacy. Dr. Saumik Biswas, beside Rob, is the CEO, president, and founder of Tenomix, a medtech company focused on improving pathology workflows, optimizing cancer care, and reducing healthcare costs. Saumik completed his PhD in pathology and laboratory medicine at the Medical Innovation Fellowship at Western University, where he co-founded Tenomix. Dr. Oleksiy Zaika is the CTO and co-founder of Vessl Prosthetics, a medtech company delivering adjustable prosthetic solutions to improve mobility for amputees. A Western University alumnus with a PhD in anatomy, Oleksiy has held leadership roles as an instructor, innovation fellow, and co-founder of a consulting group chapter. And our moderator today, all the way from Toronto, our good friend Arash Samimi, is a physicist and the founder of Eliomedica, a medical device strategy firm specializing in market entry, investor relations, and regulatory affairs. He collaborates with startups and physician entrepreneurs to commercialize market fit, investment-ready products that offer compelling value propositions. So with that, afterwards, we'll have closing remarks from Larry, and I hand it over to Arash to moderate this panel.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to our second panel discussion. The first one we had with, we sat down with Oleksiy from Vessl, and that was in last summer, right? And where we talked about product market fit. We got a lot of good feedback from the audience, so here we are, the second one. So wait for the third one, is coming. And so just to get a better sense of who's in the audience, so I see familiar faces and also new faces. Do we have startup gurus or startup founders, physician entrepreneurs, investors, students? Okay, we have a mix. That's good. So I also want to highlight that Clark, a very good friend of mine, yes, please raise your hand, wrote a very good blog last time for our panel. This time he's also going to write up a summary of our conversation today, so follow up with him. Other than that, as the goal for today is really, we kind of all know, I mean, at least people who are in the field of medical device and biotech, that building a startup in particular in this sector is quite complex for many reasons that I guess we're going to explore. I guess our goal today is to learn from our startups who started from scratch, fundraise, and they're on a meaningful trajectory. Say yes and smile, please. Yes, as it shows, they have been moving forward at a very good speed. So we're going to learn from that, and hopefully that's going to be a motivation for us to innovate and to be unique in a world where everyone wants to fit in systems, but we can be our own the innovator of our ecosystem. So you've been everywhere. I was just reading the news today. CBC headline for Deep Breeze, putting London on the world stage. That's what they say. LSI, in fact, they just posted something on social media. Is Sydney here? No? Okay. LSI, a solution for the hundreds of thousands of amputees, and Toronto Star, a boom for diagnosis. So tell us about, you've been doing a lot in the past year. Tell us about what has been the proudest moment for you, maybe, or what's the latest news?
So, thank you for having me. I'm Oleksiy. I would say the biggest, proudest moment that we have over the last year. Well, it actually just got announced. We just had an oversubscribed pre-seed raise that we've closed, which was really exciting. It's been, over the last year, balancing that out within our team with product development, clinical testing, key opinion leader engagement, marketing, all the different strands that founders kind of have to have a hold on, and doing that over the last year, and finding the right people to bring to the table as investors, as advisors, as board members, and actually learning to say no to some of the money that was brought forward, and knowing that those were not the right partnerships. I would say all the work that went into making those very difficult decisions, growing closer as a team, I think is something that I'm incredibly proud of. It's been a wild journey, and we're really excited now that we have all of this gas in the engine to really do some really incredible things as Vessl in 2025.
For me, I think first, what I'm really proud of is just seeing the whole community come together. There's a lot of familiar faces here that have supported us in so many different ways. I see Dell over there from IRAP, Leo from Innovate, David Muir from Western, LEDC, BioNext. There's a whole handful of individuals that have supported us. And compared to where we started in the early days, obviously this network is growing now in MedTech. But I would say for us over the last year, closing an oversubscribed financing round of over $2.1 million, all Canadian, was almost crazy to think of, especially for a MedTech startup, because that usually doesn't happen unless you bring in a lot of US investors. So really proud of the team for that. Early 2023, we had one full-time employee. And fast forward now, we have about 8 full-time employees, plus several part-time individuals, interns, consultants. So we're at about 30-ish people now that we get to oversee and manage, which is crazy to think about. The third thing I would say is, where we initially started back in 2021, we had an early prototype developed, and just seeing how many iterations we've conducted over the last 3 years and having our new robot come to us in the next 2 weeks is really phenomenal. And it looks like the real deal there. So I'm really excited about that. And the fourth thing I'm super proud of is, we were just a group of individuals from London wanting to make a difference in the medical ecosystem, and having support from huge hospitals like the Mayo Clinic. I'm in conversations right now with Beth Israel Deaconess Medical Center in Boston and Dana-Farber right now, who's super interested in collaborating with us. So just seeing sort of the impact we'll have in the pathology field is just something I always dreamed about growing up, and hopefully being able to make that meaningful impact. So, and working with great people.
Nicely done. Hi everyone, Rob Arntfield with Deep Breathe, and thanks LEDC for putting this together, and Arash, nice to see you again. Does everyone know Arash? Like he's quite a guy. If you'll hopefully get a sense. Like I know we're on the panel, but he should, hopefully he flexes a little bit because he's got a really beautiful mind, and the way he kind of deconstructs and can parcel things together. He's both as an advisor, but also in sort of, I think, organizing thinking around what this is and the metacognition around kind of these kind of events. So yeah, you're the reason I came today. So it's great to see you. Yeah. That said, from the Deep Breathe side, we're really grateful. Like Saumik said, there's sort of this. I've been a physician in town for a while, and I mean, I've never met you before, Larry. I don't know. Like this whole life sciences vibe around the innovation circle has been really quite uplifting and interesting. For those of us who have dared to step out of sort of the swim lane that is the conventional medical operator space, and to find kind of a soft landing has been really quite meaningful. And Justin, wherever you are, of course, and the BioNext crew with Barbara and Tom and whatnot. So that's been really, the community is obviously why we're all here. And then, on our side, again, similarly to Saumik's sort of reflections, at some level, you're just like a group of people trying to move a good idea forward. And at some point, there's various inflection points. Like most of it's like, just this stalled progress bar in your mind of like, am I getting anywhere? Am I getting anywhere? And then all of a sudden there's like a inflection point. And there's been a few of those this year. I mean, so some of the team that we've grown with are here, like Bennett and Brooke are here. And they're again, we've gained team members that are just exceptional humans, and so those moments as a founder, you just sort of like, how lucky am I? The other piece is that we've had some meaningful interaction with some of the largest organizations in the world this year. We came first place in a U.S. Army DoD competition that was an international competition for 150 tech companies, and we came first in the world, I guess, in that. And so that was meaningful because that's again one of those moments where you don't really know if you're making progress, and then all of a sudden there's kind of just this like inflection point where the largest organization in the world puts their hand on your shoulder and says, we like what you're doing. And it's like, wow, okay. And anyone who's been through the startup kind of founder journey, I think it's just it's 90% chewing glass and then like 10% of those kind of victories. And it's been awesome to see the rise, then what that does for our team, and then this positive feedback loop that it happens across the team landscape. So lots and lots of high points for the year. But anyway, that's a short summary. I'll pass it back to Arash to weaponize his next questions for us.
I have no questions. I think what is interesting, I mean, what makes this event unique to me as well is that we kind of knew each other from when we were at the very initial stage. We're thinking about, where do we go in terms of development roadmap, strategy, fundraising, and we are still friends. Also, they are now millionaires, right? So that's a good thing. But like I said, I think these are startups who.
The QuickBooks login.
In any case, I'm going to dive deeper into what you've done so far in terms of your technology development, and I'm going to talk about or maybe ask a couple of questions about clinical needs or needs in general. We see a lot of companies or startups that develop technologies and they get cleared by the regulatory body because the focus of the regulatory body for those who are not in the medical device field is solely focused on safety and efficacy. We also see a lot of companies whose technologies are coming from a real clinical need. And those also get cleared by the regulatory bodies. But the ones that are not coming from a clinical need typically get stopped because now who's going to buy it from me, right? So there's no reimbursement in process, there's no infrastructure, there's no need, right? So I think you've been already, what I like about these startups is that these technologies are coming from a real clinical need. And I'm so happy that Robert is here today because we know that physicians are pretty close to the patients, to the healthcare system. And these are the people who can see and identify what those clinical needs are so that then the engineers build on those clinical needs. So tell us about how you got to that point. How did you identify that clinical need? And why did you pick that as your strategic direction for the startup? You can start now that you said it. You have the mic.
Question again? No, it's I think
the need.
Yeah, the clinical need. I mean,
Yeah.
ultimately, if you're not solving a clinical need, it's just a gadget, and especially mindful as in the AI space, like AIifying like stuff is just like okay, cool. Like there's so much of that. And that's actually made it to product level in if you look at some of the large companies, they've developed these AI tools that solve no problem. And they may have helped develop their technical team or had other sort of internal objectives, but to stick one's neck out to the degree that certainly as a middle-aged physician with one limb is becoming fat and happy as a professor at the university, and the other limb is whatever the hell I'm doing now. Zagging into that limb, you have to have a reasonable call, and the call was, I spend my day job training physicians, like, several at a time per month, as one of the, leading centers North America and how to use hand carried ultrasound. And it's very good for my like career and classic like impact as a teacher and as a professor, but it's totally ridiculous because it doesn't scale well at all. And so again, one area is like good for me, and one area is actually solving the problem. And so the problem is that we to impart the expertise that I need to give to people to be able to use a hand-carried ultrasound device to deliver like timely, immediate diagnoses to people. I just need to train a couple 100,000 more doctors in the next 10 years, or we could develop these kind of solutions with the help of engineers and again all the ecosystem that is here today to try and actually take a big swing to put my brain inside the device. And so I knew the need was there because they keep coming from all over North America to London, Ontario to learn how to use ultrasound. And so I have this frontline access to know this is an unmet need, both for the patient at the patient level, but also at the manufacturer level. If you make ultrasound machines, the biggest rub is that you can't find users for your devices. And so if we can solve that with computer vision and AI, then I think everybody wins. So that's a bit of a longer background, but perhaps you wanted. But
maybe you also want to say, maybe it's the right time also, maybe you can, just at a very high level, tell us what your technology actually does.
of course. Our technology is a computer vision solution. So the easiest way is I think of it like self-driving cars. It's self-drive for ultrasound, for hand-carried ultrasound. The mechanical and miniaturization advances with ultrasound have made it so that it's smartphone compatible. It's destined to be a commodity in medicine because of its lack of expense and its ease of use. But for a trained user, as well as a few other features, but the biggest rate limiting step is user base and training. And so we just sort of skip over that adoption curve by implementing like a self-drive system in the device, particularly for respiratory ultrasound, because respiratory complaints drive most of the medical imaging market on a daily basis in the hospital and outside the hospital. So if that's satisfactory.
Wonderful.
Okay, excellent.
I mean,
Yeah.
you can raise your hand and ask a question randomly. Totally fine. Saumik, so you're not a physician, are you?
No,
How did you find that need, and how did you target that?
Yeah,
How did you validate it?
Yeah, so my background, I did my PhD in pathology, so I did more of like the clinical sciences. So my work focused a lot on identifying certain RNA molecules, using them as diagnostic or therapeutic targets for different complications in diabetes and cancer. So I had a bit of an appreciation for new innovations, and I sort of worked on these technologies before COVID made it super popular. So, but anyways, my biggest thing, yeah, OG, yeah, exactly. But no, my biggest thing is that I wanted to sort of understand more about the life science commercialization process. And the only way I could really learn more about this process was doing this medical innovation fellowship program at Western, which Oleksiy can also talk about too. But what it is, it's a 10.5-month program. You're in a room filled with other engineers, clinical scientists, and physicians. And your whole job is to basically interview physicians like Rob, learn all their pain points, and then basically pick a pain point to build a technology for. And at the end of the program, you have two options. If that tech, if you patent it, you can license it out to some other company, or you can have your startup. So when my team and I, we interviewed hundreds of clinicians. We probably generated about 178 clinical needs. So we had things that ranged from earwax removal to better EMR integration to physiotherapy needs. And the one problem that really stuck with me was this issue that Dr. Matthew Cicchini brought up, and he's a pathologist at University Hospital. And he was talking about this process in colon cancer staging, where there's a certain subset of patients that have to undergo surgery. And the surgeons are going in, they cut out the tumor and the surrounding fatty tissues in the gut, and they send this massive tissue sample to the pathology lab, where someone is literally using their hands, digging through the fat mindlessly and for many hours, trying to find these small lymph nodes that are buried in the fat. So why are they doing this? The whole objective is to find every single lymph node, send those lymph nodes for additional testing, and those test results basically help indicate if you're stage 2, stage 3, or stage 4 colon cancer, which basically governs treatment decisions. So when I heard this from Matt, I was just thinking about, some of our initial training, because I wasn't looped in about a lot of the clinical methods. And the thing in medicine, and Rob can probably talk about this, is you get so ingrained in the day-to-day workflows, you sometimes don't question a lot why certain processes are being done. So this sort of central dogma approach. So I was like, maybe this is a London thing. And, you know, I love pathology. And I think there's one other person in here that loves pathology as much as I do, which is Sarah, which she's somewhere here. Oh, there she is. She loves pathology too. But I was just so connected to the situation because first I love pathology. That was my training. And I lost my aunt to improper colon cancer staging. So my team and I, we basically looked at different needs. One of those needs was this lymph node search process that I was focused on. And our whole goal was to basically look at different criterias and sort of filter through those 178 needs based on market size. How easy is it to develop an MVP? We only had a $500 budget, right? So there's like all these different sort of factors we had to think about. And with my team, we ultimately settled on this problem. So going back, we interviewed physicians in other parts of Canada, in the US, Europe, Middle East, and everyone said the same thing. This lymph node search process is super labor intensive, it's unreliable and super expensive. And that's where my team and I, we dove deeper into the problem and started building out our technology. So what we ultimately built is this device. It's codenamed the Lymphinator. So if anyone has any better names, let me know, please. But what it is, it's a novel benchtop robotic scanning device that leverages both robotics, ultrasound imaging, and AI. So 3 different technologies. And what we're building is this system that can help automate the search process. So the whole idea would be pathology staff take these tissues, they would put it into our robot, press start, our robot uses ultrasound to scan the tissues automatically, and our AI is analyzing the ultrasound footage, finding the lymph nodes, and then it tells the robot to physically mark where the lymph nodes would be. So at the end, we give the pathology staff a map of exactly where the lymph nodes are and the sizes of those lymph nodes. So you think about like a washing machine analogy, like for example, you know, you have dirty clothes, you want to get your work done. So you throw your clothes in the washing machine, you come back after 40 minutes and your clothes are basically done, right? Same idea with our device. You basically throw the tissue in, you can go do other urgent work that's coming into the labs, and then basically come back to a finished lymph node search process that's been done. And you know exactly where you need to take out those lymph nodes. So for us, really it's trying to improve that efficiency and hopefully that accuracy for finding lymph nodes. Because the one thing we found out is we did a clinical study with Mayo Clinic over the last year. We looked at 122 colon cases, and we found out that the average human error rate for finding lymph nodes at Mayo was 50%. And for certain cases where the patient received what they call neoadjuvant chemotherapy, the error rates were 97%. This is at your leading hospital in the world. So my team and I, we're trying to hopefully make that process better, and through added collaborations, we'll be looking to improve that process as best as possible.
Those error rates are crazy. It just shows how, you know, now that you're in it, it's like a very seemingly. Yeah, and we all work within our own systems, but it just shows you how some of those systems that we just kind of go through our day-to-day routines are not always the best. And it's like really good to practice trying to like challenge your thinking of like, why do we do the things that we do the way that we do? And this seems like now that you're in it, it's such an obvious next step. And that's kind of the process that we went through at Vessl as well. So we did this medical innovation fellowship as well. Looked at a bunch of needs. We had like 200 clinical needs that we explored. And this one about socket fit for amputees really like stuck out to us. We were all kind of outside of the field of prosthetics. My co-founder, Sydney, she did work, she did have a project in the prosthetic space, but that was like our closest connection at that point in time. So our curiosity about this problem that we found was initially just being kind of baffled that this is the state of things, the state that tech is at. Why isn't something better available? And here's what we found. We were doing an observership. We were at a diabetic foot care clinic. We were actually looking at wound management. We were looking at bed sores, any kind of pain points there that we could try to tackle with the team. And that day, it was a Wednesday, like every single person coming in was an amputee getting their socket refitted. So the socket is like this like custom molded carbon fiber cup that holds the amputated limb and connects it to the rest of the prosthesis. And, you know, this is a custom device. It's custom made for every patient. Why are they coming in, getting it refitted and complaining about these problems? And it's like nonstop patients coming in. Is today socket refitting day? No, this is just a regular occurrence, standard operating procedures. You know, these patients, as they're getting used to their new device post surgery, you know, some of these patients are months out, some of them are years out. they on average see their prosthetist about 9 times in a year. And out of those 9 times, 6 of those appointments are to fix their socket fit. So we thought about, we came into it very skeptical, like, why is this still being done this way? And what happened? Because we know we have a very innovative society in North America. I know money has been thrown at this. Like, we're obviously not the ones coming in being the smartest ones in the room, being like, oh, I have the right answer. You just need to like apply Chat GPT to this or whatever else is the hottest thing. So, we came into it super skeptical and did a lot of market research, talked to a lot of key opinion and stakeholders, and learned a few things, that things have been tried, but they didn't really fit the market properly. Either they were just another manually adjustable solution, and amputees come from a variety of backgrounds. They have a different mix of ailments. Many of them have diabetes and might not have the right level of feeling in their limbs, so they just don't know how much adjustment they need when the fit goes wrong. And the other side of the coin is, those really excited engineers that came into it thinking, oh, I'm going to make you a bionic socket. Yes, it's going to be a little heavier. Yes, it's going to require batteries. It might break a little earlier than your other socket, but it's going to auto adjust and it's going to be the coolest thing. And then they spend all this money developing it. And then they go into the market and they're like, oh, no one can actually afford this thing, and insurances won't actually pay for this. And so, this was, through going through that research process, we understood that this was a really debilitating problem. Not just for the amputees, because they had more wound development when the socket doesn't fit properly. They stop doing their like daily activities of living. They're just like completely decreasing their quality of life consistently when their socket stops fitting. And prosthetists, based on the way that the reimbursement system works, which is exacerbated in the US, is once they prescribe the socket and they make the socket, when the patient comes back and they need their socket redone or refitted, they actually don't get paid in the same way. So they're actually losing money in terms of what their time is worth. And so they're like stuck because they care for their patients and they have to provide the care. And they care for the quality that these patients, quality of life that these patients have, but they have to spend this time going through this process over and over again, and they're wasting a lot of their time doing this. And so coming in very skeptical, getting opinions from across the board to really understand what we needed to do. And me being a very like tech forward guy, who, I like automating my house and things like that. Like I love that side of things. We had to say the market is not ready for the really tech forward things. We had to go to the insurance providers and figure out what will they pay for and what kind of innovation can we provide to really alleviate the burden for amputees and their clinicians, and really make it so that it's not a financial burden for them to really adopt this idea. So our isoform device is a kinetically powered, automatically adjusting socket enabling technology. So prosthetists can still have their same workflow. They still build sockets in the same way that they're used to for manual systems. So they build out these panels and they're tensioned using this lacing system. Think of it like BOA dials that you've seen on like snowboard shoes, ski boots, golf shoes. And so we're allowing them to keep their workflow. We're trying not to introduce too much change management. And we have this widget, the isoform, that sits on the bottom, that it's shock absorbing. So when they're walking around throughout the day, it absorbs the shock from their walking, and it uses that energy using an internal mechanism to slowly try to wind up the lacing system until a pressure limit has been reached. So that typically throughout the day, as they're moving around, they're actually, when they wake up, they might be a little bit more swollen from sleeping and being lying down. And then as they lose volume in the first couple hours of the day, the system will automatically cinch in and provide the right fit so that they're not pistoning inside of their socket or they're not bottoming out, which is where a lot of that wound development comes from. And so, we went forward and started developing this idea, getting a lot of insights from the industry. And so now we're getting to the point where we're testing it with patients in the US and looking to release it in about 6 months.
So I think for those who are at least dreaming of building a medical device company, this discussion around understanding the need and solving a real problem is the key. But that's really just the beginning. So I want to dive deeper into the market dynamic for you and how you see the impact of your technology, where you're sitting today, and maybe in the next 3 to 5 years. what do you think your technology is gonna do, considering the competing forces in the market? I mean, we have acquisitions happening, like in the field of ultrasound diagnostic, GE acquiring companies like President, a lot of software as a medical device companies getting acquired. I think in your area, it's probably at a slower rate. I don't know. You can shed light on that. But
In terms of market consolidation?
yeah,
Okay.
like acquisitions and competition, right? So thinking about competitions, emerging startups, and the dynamic of acquisitions in the market, uh, where do you stand today? How fast do you need to be, and where do you want to be in the next 3 to 5 years? Kind of like your vision about maybe the exit points, maybe not.
I can start, sure. So in terms of like market consolidation, where the market in prosthetics is going, the market is consolidating quite a bit. So, there's traditionally been these like two halves of the prosthetic world, which is very separate from the rest of medical devices world. Like we learned that very quickly. It kind of functions in its own bubble. But there was this very clinical side of like research labs, clinic owners, clinic network development, that's kind of worked separately from product development and distribution side. And that was fairly steady, and that line was pretty clear for a long time until about, like, I would say maybe 7, 8 years ago. That line started blurring as like these big clinic networks started buying up products, innovative products, and those that have like really big product line offering notice that, and so they're buying up clinic networks, so they're all competing with each other on all fronts. And so all of these innovations in the prosthetic space are getting bought up pretty quickly because everybody wants to have this unique competitive advantage. And I think that we're in a good spot to really work with some of the bigger players in the industry to really help us with distribution and like our presence in the market. And so that's something that we've been very cognizant of. And in the 2.5 years of this company, we've been continuously talking with those players to make sure that we're on their radar. Obviously, those conversations stay fairly superficial for the most part, but having that presence is part of our strategy, because we believe that you don't necessarily have to be completely siloed. Like, I have my innovation and like I'm going to disrupt the market. There are lots of ways for you to like work with the established players to figure out ways to get this to everybody faster and develop it faster, because that's, to us, is the most important thing. So in like that 3 to 5 year timeline, right now our isoform device is just for below knee amputees, which are the vast majority of amputees, bringing this to above knee amputees, pediatric use cases. And then we have a vertical integration of products that we have planned that we would just like to become more standard in the industry. We entered the industry, or we just started the company 2.5 years ago, started learning about the industry, and kind of took a stab of, reimbursement codes that we wanted to use, that we would apply for. And less than a year ago, just in April of 2024, a brand new reimbursement code was issued, which is very rare in the prosthetics world, that directly applied to us, even though we weren't in the market yet. So we're seeing like the market's very hungry for this kind of innovation and its adoption. And so we're hoping that this continues, that in 3 to 5 years, we show through the adoption of our device that we need more reimbursement codes. We need more money funneled towards helping clinicians and helping the patients maintain their businesses and their lives, and not only helping them once they're already kind of like at the end of things, like when things are completely, when businesses are completely struggling to offer like new devices, or when patients are completely, wound-ridden and their quality of life has already suffered, and that's when they get that assistance. So I'm really hoping that that becomes more of a standard, and that our isoform socket it becomes more of a standard issue for new amputees, because no one should have to, there's already enough things on their minds that they have to learn and take care of and adapt to. And reducing that as a standard thing across the board, like taking one thing off their plate, would be a win for me.
Before going to robotics, because that's big, So who are some of the like the players in your field? Like
So
we hear a
you
lot about like because we hear about like Philips, GE, or
you hear like Striker or whatever,
right
right? Yeah,
Striker, but
very
we never
separate.
hear like
Yeah, a lot of European or Nordic countries. So like Ottobock, Oser, Proteor. Anyone familiar with these names? Huge corporations.
Europe?
What is going on in Europe?
I thought it's just
I
North
thought it was just
America.
funny accents over there. What is going on in Europe? There's a lot of innovation. It's
But why there in the field of prosthetics? Like why those big names are all
um, they have a lot of history there. So Ottobock is, a German company that's been around for a long time. That's very like established. Think of like huge company that's really hard to like really pivot. That just kind of gobbles things up and like really refines the processes, but is really a well-established player. Um, some of it is just like the history and like
Yeah.
the age of the country and having that being established. So we're seeing some of that in US and Canada in certain industries, but definitely, Europe has some of those some of those legacy companies that have, been able to adapt well enough to not be taken out by like these disruptive technologies. And so, Oser is one of those that, in the early 90s has just started like buying up the right kind of innovations and like grew through those like innovations and just like streamlining them for the market. And so that's what we're seeing in the prosthetics world. But it is very odd how, for being a very medical space, how prosthetics and orthotics are like very separate. And that's, it's a different club, it's a different bubble. I would love for it to overlap more. I think they have a lot to learn from each other, from the rest of the medical device space. But that's how it functions right now.
cool. And let's get into robotics, which is also huge. I think I got my first job in medical device, and I was working on a robotic system for brain surgery. And it was interesting. It was more about when we talk about robotics, I think it's primarily assisting the surgeon maybe to do things in an easier way or more accurate. But it seems in your case, you're uploading it. It seems like I can just press the button and I can go do my stuff and come back. So tell us about that.
Yeah. For me, when I think about sort of how the market's evolving, I look at sort of different factors here. So one is sort of how does the technological landscape look? Like what's sort of evolving at that point in time? What does the clinical market look like? And at the same time, are there any geopolitical changes in the market? Because for me, you hear this thing about product market fit, making sure your product is, in alignment with what the market wants. I think the market's continuously evolving. And because of that, you have to continuously make sure your product's evolving. So for us, I'll give an example, because our tech, again, we use robotics, we use imaging, we use AI. So I have to keep an eye out on sort of each of these markets. So I'll start from the clinical side. So what I sort of predicted probably about 5-6 years ago is the obvious. One is cancer cases are always going to rise, and it's continuously rising. You look at the rates, a lot of young people are getting colon cancer, a lot of women are getting breast cancer. There's a lot of these cancer rates that if you look at the metrics, stats, like it's continuously increasing in some of the cancers. The second part is for pathology labs, there's a huge focus on precision-based medicine or personalized medicine. So there's a lot of downstream technologies that are coming out that's deeply looking into your genetics, your genomics, right? Profiles of your RNA, your protein markers, right? So there's a lot of hard work that's required to prep those samples for those tests. So you sort of look at the picture here is you have an increase in sample volume, you have an increase in sample prep that's required, and then you have a demand for all these, personalized medical tests. So right away, you can sort of put the picture together where if the lab staff isn't sort of keeping up with all those changes, you have a huge bottleneck that's happening. And that's sort of one thing I predicted probably 5-6 years ago. And the more I'm talking with pathology labs worldwide, they're iterating the same thing. So I had a chat with one of the GI pathologists at a Boston hospital last Friday. She was saying that because they're basically collaborating with Dana-Farber Cancer Institute, and what's going to happen is they're going to take on double the case volume for colon cancer cases. But the issue is the staff volume is still low. And they're having a big difficulty hiring pathology staff to maintain this demand, right, for all these samples that are coming in. So that's sort of one. Also on the clinical side, adoption for new medtech can be very slow sometimes. And what I sort of predict is there's going to be this pressure point that's going to hit pathology labs where they have no other choice to implement lab automation. So that's sort of the predictions that I have right now at a high level. The second part is from a technology standpoint. So we're going to be entering a whole new era of what we call physical AI. Everyone has seen the boom of just software AI and sort of all the new things you could do with this type of technology. And for AI to be productive, you have to make sure you have proper inputs, good labeled data to train the AI, and you get good outputs from that. And the saying usually goes garbage in, garbage out. So what's happening right now is from the hardware side, hardware is getting cheaper and cheaper. And as we sort of implement sort of both sides of hardware and software together, we're introducing AI into the physical world. So Arash, to your question about, it seems like what we're doing is automated. Our goal right now is building a semi-automated product, have pathology staff trust the product, right? Which will take a few years. And as the market's ready, we'll start moving towards automatic extraction. Again, adding more automation, increasing the throughput as these sample case volumes start going up. The second part is for the GPU performance, or GPUs that power the AI performance. That has been increasingly becoming amazing. So for our robot, we use one of NVIDIA's new chips, single board computers, and that's been really powering how fast our algorithm can work. And just to give you an example, in the old days, we used a standard laptop, Windows laptop. To analyze a small sample, it would take about 45 minutes, right? So an 8 centimeter by 8 centimeter tissue would take about 40 minutes. With this new implementation of our AI on a Linux-based platform using NVIDIA's chip, we're getting those analyses down to 2-3 minutes, which is a crazy, crazy jump. And again, we're going to do time-based trials next year when we look at different sample sizes, and there's a lot of inputs that can impact the AI outputs, but just to give you a sense of the improvement in GPUs and how AI is working is really amazing. The second part is from an ultrasound imaging standpoint. There's probably two people here that love ultrasound imaging as much as I do. It's probably Rob right beside me. And Del, I know you have a love for ultrasound. But one of the things is ultrasound as an imaging modality is extremely powerful in many aspects of medicine. The interesting part is ultrasound is not used in pathology whatsoever. So what we're trying to do is really exploit the capabilities of ultrasound imaging and be able to use this system that we have with hardware, robotics, ultrasound, and AI, and be able to apply this system, same system, towards different cancer cases like breast, head and neck cancer, prostate, and so forth. So really what we're trying to build is a platform system that offers multiple utility applications for the clinic, which really expands the clinical utility of the product. Okay, if that makes sense. The third part is a geopolitical aspect. I'm sure many of you may have seen the inauguration of our friend down south. In terms of the impact that's going to have on manufacturing, tariffs, right? We'll have to all pivot and adapt to these new requirements. And especially with AI, because if you think about AI, there's been a lot of studies that have shown that one ChatGPT prompt is equal to 20 minutes of turning a light bulb on. So there's going to be this demand for energy requirements. So what's happening right now, actually in the last 2 to 3 months, is Google, Meta, they're buying massive nuclear centers, electrical power upgrades to power these AI tools. So as a nation, everyone's in the AI arms race trying to figure out how do we continue supporting all these AI infrastructure and AI requirements. And that's sort of the future we're going to be living in, especially as the hardware sort of catches up. I'm sure you've heard of humanoid robots. Maybe they're going to come and take over the world, but there's still a lot of learning involved in terms of having good labeled data sets, training the algorithms, and making sure that the outputs make sense.
Touched on so many interesting points. I think we're going to have a whole session on robotics, which would be really interesting. But for the time being, we're going to go to ultrasound diagnostic, and we hear a lot about products like, I don't know, Clarius or Butterfly or handheld devices, all sorts of imaging. And so what's going on?
What is going on? So I think people are, been very patient listening for a while. So it's time for the audience participation portion of the day, if you'll allow me, Arash. I want you to conjure in your mind, if you think of the iconic physician who represents, whether fictional or real, who represents like expertise. Like it's, I'll go first. Like William Osler would be sort of the classic, like sort of iconic physician in medical training, but most of yours are probably like, let's say media or television or movies based. So raise your hand if you have an alternative, like expert doctor. Come on. Dr. House, hey, do you notice anything about? I've had patients take my picture believing they may have been treated by Hugh Laurie. Okay, who else? Anyone else? Come on. Gupta? Sanjay Gupta? All right, okay, the neurosurgeon for CNN. All right, I like it. McCoy from Star Trek, correct? Okay, I'm not a Trekkie guy, but like I get it. Was he the one who had the tricorder? Okay, it makes sense. All right, I've heard a lot about the tricorder. Anyone else? Okay, Banting, nice. So iconic for his Canadian contributions to world medicine. Good. Anyone? Okay, Arash, do you have anyone in mind? Would like Fauci. Okay, controversial and interesting choice. I like it. Recently pardoned preemptively by the outgoing president. So anyway, the line of questioning is really just if I could flash for you, whoever you came up with and quietly were sitting on, and maybe your answer was taken, if I could turn you into that person in a moment to basically be deputized momentarily to have those skills, that's ultimately what we're trying to solve for with the combination of miniaturized ultrasound and then sort of what we say expertise without the expert with the AI built inside. So if you had to momentarily become Dr. House and be able to make a diagnosis that someone's life depended on it, that's sort of what we're enabling with the deep breathe vision. And so that has, and the reason that thought experiment is useful, I think, is just like, imagine if you could turn a paramedic into that person. So a paramedic is a smart, capable, well-trained person, but they aren't given the superpowers to make, precision diagnoses in the back of a helicopter or a moving truck, or a 19-year-old Marine, faced with deciding whether their fallen sort of brother in arms or sister in arms, needs to have a needle decompression of their chest or not, because they may or may not have a punctured lung, and that's what they're taught in basic training. But you give them a device that allows them to make a precise diagnosis one way or the other. And so there's all these verticals that are almost distracting and extraordinary for us to actually have to think about in terms of the power of the combination of the hardware and then the software with ultrasound. And so we're able to take a smartphone-sized device and turn anybody into that fictional expert. And so, the core market for us 3 to 5 years is still the civilian healthcare market, where, again, if you could turn your bedside nurse into someone who now can make rapid diagnoses previously reserved for CT scan workflow and radiology costs of doing so, and instead can be done instantaneously at the bedside. So that whole market, which, taps into a really inefficient, friction-filled imaging process that goes on in every hospital around the world every day of relieving the burden of x-rays and CT scans at the minimum through deputizing bedside personnel to answer questions like, does this patient have a pneumothorax? Does this patient have pneumonia? And being able to do that instantaneously. But then you start getting, it gets wild because, and this is, my inbox increasingly gratefully reflects this, hearing from insurance, like workplace insurance companies that are interested in occupational screening for lung disease, and other companies like aerospace companies like SpaceX interested in screening for occupational lung disease, just of a different variety. The military, veterinary markets, because the lungs look the same in a dog as they do in a human, interestingly enough, because they're just sacs filled of air. So you've got this broad, multiple verticals. And so the biggest challenge for us is not becoming distracted on the way to the goal line. So that's just, in all honesty, the transparency of the challenge of having something as extraordinary as the technologies that I think the three of us are sitting on is staying true to the core market while also mobilizing quietly and sort of steadfastly these other sort of longer term markets and sort of a crawl, walk, run approach, which I've kind of heard from both of you guys, like get on base with the initial sort of core product and then build out these other exciting use cases. So that's about.
I love that. I think, Sarah, how much time do we have?
We're going to start the Q&A.
Okay, give me 1 second. I knew we were going to go over time because it's really exciting. And this one, I want to close this by asking what inspired you guys to do this, because it's very complex. It's difficult to build this as a startup. So what is it that motivates you, just in a simple sense, for all of us? You're curious. I'm curious to know.
Finding the edge of our abilities collectively. In London, which is a town that I think is capable of greatness, but is, I think, can tilt in many sectors towards mediocrity. And I think healthcare has habitually not been one of those sectors, but has to swim upstream against some of the other small-mindedness. Urban planning, train through downtown London comes to mind, kind of stuff. And so yeah, so finding the edge of our abilities.
Rob summarized that quite nicely. Honestly, it comes down to building great stuff with great people for me.
Yeah, I'd say being around very curious people, and that really fills my cup of just people that know how to say why in an annoyingly number of times to get down to the fundamental root of what we all want to achieve and where we want to be as a society. And I think in a small way, disrupting the status quo. I think we live in a very fluid environment that's sometimes we have our daily routines, we kind of fall into our own systems, and I find it really inspiring to see others that are questioning their environment and questioning in ways that it could be better, and seeing sometimes a lot of those questions we'll miss, but seeing when sometimes those questions really hit and they resonate with people, that fills my cup.
Wonderful. And I think really probably one of the best ways we can empower our ecosystem, if you agree, guys, is by being each other's advocate. And I guess that's what we're here today. We just raise each other's profile, be each other's advocate, and be there for each other, even for our competitors. And I guess that was the goal. So I'm gonna close this and we can.
Before the panel breaks and we get closing remarks from Larry, just wanted to see if there's any questions from the audience for the panel. Yeah.
First of all, thank you so much for being here and sharing your experience and knowledge. And thank you for Western Research, BioNext, and LEDC to preparing this session for us to learn more. I had a general question about the startup or the beginning of idea that you had. So in hindsight, looking back at the start, the earliest stage, or even the ideation that you had, so you mentioned different things that you had, MIF going on, 200 things, lots of research and other things. So what would be the one or two things in hindsight that you appreciate that it would be great to know that or start doing that? Or what would be the one thing that you needed to just avoid some catastrophes, some issues or problem coming up in the startup process or journey that you had? So what would be those things in your mind and experience? Thank you so much.
I can get that mic back. Who wants to start here?
It's a question about regrets, and I must say I just didn't have any that came to mind, so I was kind of gonna I don't know, park my thoughts for a minute or two. But it sounded like what would today me tell me from 4 years ago, kind of thing, right? That's your question? Yeah, I mean, ultimately, it's been I think you just learn by doing, and so I think I think maybe I could have gotten started sooner is probably the message for anyone who's on the fence, is that there's regrettably, in the ICU, I oversee a lot of death. And so, people, we often negotiate the end of people's lives, on a certain date and time, because it's you're, quote unquote, you're withdrawing life support. And, some people are well, Tuesdays doesn't really work for me because it's 2 days before my great niece's birthday and she'll always remember it that way. And it's there's never a good time for a big inflection point in one's life. And that's obviously the negative direction. But, so I oversee that for a lot of people all the time. And I would just say there's no good time. And it's just going to be a thing. And so I would just say there's no good time to probably step out and start your journey. You learn by doing, and you learn there's actually a huge community of people waiting to give you some tailwinds. So I think that's the motivating kind of thing I would have given myself maybe even earlier in my life about some of this. I don't think in retrospect, it would have been any more like the timing wouldn't have made sense for AI and imaging. But that's, I think, the message I would give to you, sounding like someone who's looking for the push.
Yeah, it's a great question. I had to really put myself 3.5, 4 years ago, sort of where I was at with my mindset. I think the biggest thing that worked really well for us is not being scared of failure. I think with society right now, we don't celebrate all the failures, things that we didn't win. It's so focused on winning that people don't oftentimes see all the hard late nights you're spending, right? All the things that didn't work. So my biggest advice would be fail fast, fail quickly, learn from it, iterate your hypotheses for whatever you're trying to target. Do that quick, and you'll learn a lot from it. The second part is, I think, from the fellowship program, I think we did a phenomenal job trying to understand the problem rather than just building some cool technology that everyone's gonna think that we think everyone's gonna use. That's the worst way to go about it. So we got a lot of validation from our end users, our customers. We really tried to use that scientific approach to understand the problem. And then what we ended up doing afterwards is figuring out how can the tech sort of align with the needs of the pathology staff and the market to make sure that there's a proper fit there. And then basically building on the economics of the healthcare problem. So really doing a lot of research on the problem and getting customer validation. And the third part is being really honest with yourself, trying to figure out what your strengths are and what your weaknesses are, and find excellent teammates, not subpar teammates, but excellent teammates that can help bridge those gaps. Because as a startup, you don't have a lot of time, and you need to have really great people working with you. So you can sort of put these diverse perspectives together, converge on different varying opinions and thoughts, and then come to a decision and then build from that.
Yeah, I echo a lot of that. My two big things were going to be, don't try to do this journey alone. Sometimes you have an idea that might be really brilliant, and you're like, work at it. I'm going to learn all the skills. Like first of all, you need a good co-founder. You need a yang to your yin. You need someone that's very different, that can challenge you, that will hold your hand when you're going through the valleys of entrepreneurship, that will question decision making. So you really want someone that's ultimately supportive, but someone that will fill your gaps, because it's in the startup community, it's very clear that those that try to go on the journey alone have a very hard time of succeeding. So that's really important. And then on the need side, this was already kind of touched on. Get married to the problem, not to the solution. Right? You might have you might have identified the problem really correctly and have found that niche. And then your first solution is this is my baby. And this is what, the captain usually goes down with that ship. And that's a big failure point when people are not able to adapt and pivot when the market data suggests otherwise, that maybe they were wrong about their assumptions. In the first year of our company, we tried a hydraulic solution that was heavy. It was really hard to repair and build into what the constraints were. And we had to, after investing all the resources into that idea, we had to be you know what, pause. We need to take all of this information that we've received and really redesign and pivot a little bit towards that end goal, because that should be the North Star that you're aiming for. And so, and in saying that, I would say the third thing would be that you're never really done collecting data. You might feel really satisfied at some point when you're starting to develop your solution, but you never truly have the final answer. So I would say that whatever sector you're in where you've defined the problem, you have to continuously try to prove your assumptions wrong to really validate them against the market. I'm assuming is this still true? I need to go and ask those questions again and continue expanding your end to make sure that you truly understand that at every step of the way, what the responses are going to be, what the expectations are, and what you can count on. So those I would say are really fundamental to make sure that you're clear-headed, because entrepreneurship can be really fun until your first valley. Yeah.
I think we have time for one more question from the audience. One more question. Who put their hand up first? I didn't see. Okay, in the back there, you're the last question. Then we're going to have closing remarks from Larry, and then Sarah's got something to say at the end as well.
Guys, thank you. I just want to say you guys are an inspiration. A year ago, I was a fourth-year biology student, and I had a little Zoom chat with Sydney from Vessl, and she gave me a lot of good advice. that I still hold true to this day. And from that day on, I said, I'm gonna keep failing, I'm gonna keep failing. And after a whirlwind of a year, I've ended up in a biotech venture capital fund, and everything's going like exponentially since then. So I've learned a lot, and this journey of entrepreneurship is like really inspiring. So just want to say congratulations to all of you guys for being on this path and continuing to follow it. So the question I have for you guys is, all of you guys mentioned the people and it's your team. I feel like there's a common consensus in entrepreneurship around this. So what are the lessons that you've learned about people, or a story or something that has really shown you people's character, and things that have happened that show you like, okay, this is a person that like I want to do this with? Like, what are the traits that have like led to that? Like, and if you can kind of get the gist of what I'm saying, a story or anything like that. Yeah.
Run the mic up. Any takers to answer first? Oleksiy, thank you.
That's really awesome to hear that you've been impacted so deeply by a pinpoint in time of just some advice. So I'm really glad that you're doing well and that you're putting those words to use and going on that path. I think this is a big this is something that really inspires me about my co-founder Sydney, is that she's a fantastic networker. She's really good at going out there and like asking for help, whereas I naturally am more of like, I can figure this out, and it's like it takes a lot to get out of the shell. So I think one of the biggest things that I've learned from watching her process is to like really, this is so easy to say, so hard to do, like build out your network. And the way you do that is through casting a really wide net, because then you're just increasing your chances of finding the right person that is going to meet the criteria for potentially advising you or giving you some of that key knowledge that you need to succeed. I found that, you know, it's a funny mix in entrepreneurship of like, yes, it's nice that people are helping you, but sometimes you gotta pay the right people to come and get you to the spot that you need to be at. But for the people that are there, that are on the sidelines, sometimes some people that have gone through the motions, that have succeeded and are there just to give back, they're waiting for you to find them. So this is kind of an example of happenstance, where the more environments you're in, the more unfamiliar they are to you, the higher likelihood that you'll find that piece that you've been missing that is going to, you know, come along and you know, like an example, we have a group that we just got exposed to that are like successful entrepreneurs with multiple exits that are not allowed to invest in us. That's part of their thesis, that meet with us for advice. And they give us like really like honest advice, because they don't have any mixed feelings about, oh, maybe I should invest in you guys, or those sorts of things. So finding the people that are going to be really honest with you, that are going to support you, is going to be a foundational piece. And this is something that we found here in the London community, in the Ontario community. There are those people there. You just have to go and like be present with them and expose yourself. And a lot of times, you know, you feel like you're bothering people by asking for help. People want to help, and they want to be asked for help, and they want to be asked for their opinion. So go out there and ask.
Really good, Oleksiy. Congratulations as well. Echoing all of Oleksiy's sentiments. I think for me, there's three sort of key principles or values that I use with business partners, investors, clinical collaborators, and more. The three values for me would be accountability, transparency, and trust. Oleksiy talked about trust. Whatever ventures you end up doing with different business partners, collaborators, investors, you need to have that trust built in place. So for us, for example, our company, there's 4 co-founders that started the company. Typically from different VCs, you'll hear, okay, if you're a solo founder, you have no luck, no money for you. If you're a team of 2 to 3 founders, you're perfect. That's what we want. If you're 4 or more, good luck. All hope is lost. That's all BS. I think the biggest thing is finding those individuals that, again, bridge your weaknesses and you know, can work together. Accountability is something I really value quite a bit. So when our team members or co-founders sat together before we incorporated the company, we each had distinct responsibilities that we are all accountable for. And if things aren't being met, that's where the element of trust and transparency kick in, where everyone we work with, I want them to be upfront with me, saying, you know, not saying, oh, I'm so great at this thing, and they're not really great at it. You know, so we've built quite the environment at Tenomix where people are so upfront with the issues they're facing. You know, everyone's really accountable. There's no excuses made. I think operating that way has allowed us to build these successful relationships. So I encourage you, you know, if there's certain values that you value quite a bit, apply that when you're meeting new people, whether it's investors, collaborators, business partners, right? And I think that worked really well for us. And the 4 co-founders now to this date have been phenomenal. We talk about everything, right? So that's really important.
Yeah, nice anecdote of just the network effect, right? You finding a mentor in Sydney and just what you feel has transformed things. And again, all of us will have stories in the room about this. Mentorship's really deeply important to me. I mentor a lot of physicians in training, and I would say that, you know, the infinity switch that I use at my clinical job, but especially, and I mean, Bennett, Brooke, and Melissa, who are here from our team, feel free to pull them afterwards for the blinded taste test of this comment. But I would say that, you know, there's a contract that I have with them and they with me, that we're both deeply curious, or all of us are deeply curious people who are interested very much in growth, personal growth, growing an idea. And I will help them grow as people because I'm generally senior to most of the employees on our young tech team, as tech is a young person's game. And they help the company grow, and they also have perspectives that I can't access because, frankly, of the age difference. And so if they come to grow, they will grow. And if they want to grow, then we'll do it together. And that's really kind of the sense of like, how bloodthirsty curious are you? And so, you know, like Bennett, who's here, you know, Bennett, I got you for a second. He's, you know, he's a dragon slaying software engineer came back from working at Amazon on the West Coast, where he could have, you know, sold his soul for lots and lots of money, and obviously risen with one of the best organizations in the world. And he's like, but he's a young guy, and he's got something to prove, and he's here with us now because, you know, it's very clear what's down path A. Path B is stochastic and unknown, and man, there's a bright future there. But it's that curiosity, that humility, and that's kind of like that infinity switch. And so every person on our team is somebody who I'm so proud to introduce, even as an island of who they are as individuals, so that when people come up and say, hey, I met your person at Debrief, like, fuck, they're impressive. And I'm like, yes, they are, in whatever that is they do. And Melissa's one of the most impressive medical students I've ever seen, and Brooke's one of the most impressive young women I've ever met, who, you know, all working with us in such different ways. But it's just that it's not a technical resume thing. And all the people here who have built companies before know that that's just like that talent and that bloodthirsty kind of curiosity. You can't train for that. You can't teach that. And once you identify it, it's like, I'll find a job for you. So those soft skills, not only soft skills, that temperament, that aperture on the world, man, it's contagious to be around. And so we just infect each other all day, every day. As really bad as that sounds.
Thank you all. For closing remarks, I'm going to pass the mic over to Larry McKinnon from LEDC.
Thanks, Justin. So my comments will be really, really quick. I think what I've heard from the panel is how they've built their teams and to get to the success that they've had so far. But each of them has also mentioned the ecosystem, or what I use the phrase ecosystem, but the community that they're in that helps them along the way. And I know they've been in other ecosystems. They work in sort of wider ecosystems in London, but London is getting it right, and you are all part of that. And LEDC is so proud to be working with BioNext and Western Research Parks to sponsor and partner this connector series. So please come back to more connector series events. Know that there's a little lunch outside because it is time for lunch. And I'd like to thank Justin, Arash, and our panel members for an amazing presentation. And I'm sure you'll all want to chat with them afterwards. Okay, thank you all.
Thank you. This is the network effect. So thank you all. Thank you. And onward and upward.